Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, y'all. I'm Brother Ali. It's the Travelers Podcast. On the last episode, I decided to redo the bumpers, or what we call them. So the intro and the outro and the ad breaks. I decided to redo those. We had a conversation with Al from Rhymesayers, who has headed up the creative team to develop the packaging for some of those incredible album covers. And we recorded that in the studio, but I just happened to be in West Africa. And so rather than run with the bumpers that I had recorded in the studio, I wanted to record fresh ones from West Africa just so that you could experience those and hear them. And I did that one other time, actually, when I was in Mecca. Did I record a whole episode, or was it just the bumpers? But it was when Dave from De La Soul passed away. My family and I were in Mecca or Medina, I can't remember, but we were in Saudi Arabia. And so I recorded those on my phone. And it's not the ideal situation in terms of sound quality, but I think it's just fine. So that's what I did last week for the bumpers. And this week, I have a lot to talk about and a lot to share and a lot to just check in with you guys about. But it would probably not be the best idea for me to go to my studio, even though my studio is only about 15-minute walk from my house, maybe 10. This is a special week for my family, so 3 of the 4 ladies in my house all have birthdays in the same week in April. And so it's birthday week for us. Usually my wife takes off work and it's a special time. So we didn't quite do it like that because we were in Africa the week prior for the end of Ramadan and also for the Eid holiday and a few days after that. And so, that kind of was like the birthday, the holiday all kind of rolled into one. But so my wife is doing something of a staycation. So she had a spa day and then a couple nights in a hotel just for some self-care time. I mean, this is a woman who is married to a touring musician. And on top of that, she's a therapist. And on top of that, she's a mother of 4. So, I mean, she is dealing with a lot of other people's stuff. And so a few times during the year, I really encourage her to do like a staycation. And in Istanbul, you can do it pretty inexpensively. If you pay attention, you can get hotels and Airbnbs and things like that are not extremely expensive. So it's one of the many blessings of living in this country. And so normally, my eldest daughter, it's no problem for me to go at night and still go to the studio. But one of the little ones is sick and waking herself up, coughing in the middle of the night and things. So I just thought it would probably not be the best idea for me to leave and go to the studio to record this episode. So I'm going to record it in a couple parts here on my phone, and I hope that you'll excuse me on the sound quality. And I'm going to do my best. I'm going to put it in my computer, and I'm actually an all right little audio engineer. I've become that way over the years just by doing the things that I need to do. But I just keep on plugging away at it, keep on learning new things, keep on getting new plugins, and keep learning new stuff. So hopefully I'll be able to make it sound at least bearable. We're brought to you as always by the Zakat Foundation. Usually on these solo episodes, I forget to really go into that. But the same way that your favorite independent and, underground artists, it's really the artist and that believes in the music. There's usually a team of people that work on the art together. And then there's a very small team around them that try to do great things. It's we believe in something. We want to do something cool. We know that the odds are against us, but we're doing our best. And Zakat Foundation, in a lot of ways, they're like that in the world of global humanitarian organizations. It's a small team of people. They're on something of a shoestring budget compared to some of these billion-dollar companies that are run a lot like corporations. And when you give your money, a lot of it goes to overhead. Whereas with the Zakat Foundation, they just have done some really cool things. There's stuff that they've really done that proves them to be leaders in the space. And one of the things that they do is sponsor this podcast. It's a Muslim organization, but they don't only employ Muslims. They don't only work with Muslims. They don't only help Muslims. They help people that are in need, and they don't use the work to try to proselytize. And they're people that I I appreciate what they do. I respect what they do. And I love to get the word out about them, you know. It was dope, just to give you a little kind of idea. So Amna Mirza was on the podcast, and she and I met because she was coming from the world of marketing, and she worked on really big stuff. Like she worked for Michelle Obama, and I think she did something with Oprah maybe, but she worked on a lot of really huge campaigns. And she was like, you know what, I need to take this stuff that I'm doing and try to benefit my community. So she was working at a well-known Islamic institution. They had hired me to come and do something for one of their events. Now, and I've worked in the music industry, and not like the Muslim music industry, but like the music industry. I was on the main stage of Coachella and things like that. And I've been covered in all the big magazines and all that kind of stuff. Not always, like my career fluctuates. So I've had moments that are really like that and moments that aren't as much like that. But, both of us came from working in the mainstream, as it were, in our respective fields. And so we met because I was hired to do an event for an Islamic organization that she was working for. And just the treatment was really bad. And that happens a lot of times in the Muslim community. And so I said, okay, I don't necessarily need these gigs. I do them because I believe in the work. But a lot of the artists and speakers, they do need these gigs. There are people for whom that's their industry. And so I'm going to speak up for the people who can't speak up for themselves. I can lose these gigs. And a lot of times when I speak up, I do lose these gigs. But there are artists who might feel like they can't speak up for themselves. And so I'm going to speak up. So I went in there and I told her what was going on. And by her response, I was like, oh, you're not just in this little bubble. Like, you really do this work and you understand like what this should be like. So that's how we connected. And she is the one that we started the relationship with Zakat Foundation. And she has moved on to do her own private practice now, which is really dope. And I was thinking like, oh man, I wonder what it's going to be like for us trying to work with Zakat Foundation. It would be hard for a lot of those kind of organizations to justify sponsoring the podcast of this like underground independent rapper, because most of my audience isn't even Muslim. I think maybe it's like 70-30 if I had to just guess. And, a lot of you guys that listen to this podcast are not Muslim. Most of the people that listen to my music aren't Muslim. So it's kind of like, well, why are you doing this? And the first meeting that we had was with a really cool gentleman, a white guy who converted to Islam. And he was telling some of his like white homies in rural America, like not in a major city. And I haven't gotten his permission to tell this story, so I'm going to kind of leave the names out, the specifics out. But he said, man, I was telling my friends that I got this job, like some of his like white friends, like he's a convert to Islam, recent convert. So he's telling like his white homies back home, I just got this job with this really cool humanitarian organization. It's called Zakat Foundation. And his white homies out in the middle of nowhere said, oh, they're the people that do the Brother Ali podcast. And so I'm like, oh, mashallah, that's dope. So he understands, you know what I mean? Like, yes, we are reaching people that we wouldn't reach otherwise. So it's a beautiful thing. Zakat Foundation, you can check them out at Zakat US on social media, or zakat.org, zakat.org. We were doing a thing during Ramadan to send meals to Gaza, and they are still doing that. Zakat Foundation is one of the organizations that is in Egypt, and they have had success getting supplies into Gaza. And so my feeling was like, if they're actually on the ground, risking it all and putting all that they've got into getting those trucks into Gaza, then I want to make sure that we do whatever we can to keep the trucks full. So it's $5 to send a meal. But there's other places too. I mean, they do work in Yemen and they do work all over the world. It's a really dope organization. So if you're listening to this, if you've done it before, and especially if you haven't done it yet, if you have gotten any benefit out of the Travelers podcast, you should know they sponsored it from day one. They're the people that said from the very beginning, we'll make sure that you are seeing something financial for the time that both me and BK put into this podcast every week. So this podcast happens because they supported it. I wanted to share with you the reason why it was important enough to just even start talking into my phone is because I'm in a major moment of my career and of my life. And we just dropped an album this past Friday. I'm recording this Sunday night. You guys will hear it on Monday, inshallah, if everything goes according to plan. And we just dropped this album that we've been talking about for a few months called Love and Service. The idea of love and service, the inspiration for that idea comes from my primary religious teacher and guide who lives in the Gambia, West Africa, who says that, all of these spiritual paths, the traditional way of looking at the religion of Islam in terms of understanding it is that it deals with theology and belief. Like, what do we believe is true about God and about the world and about ourselves and about what life is really about? What do we believe? And as within theology, you have the idea of creed. And there are different approaches and understandings to Islamic theology, although the foundations are all the same. The foundations are the same, and then there are differences of opinion and different approaches for how to explain things. And so you have that kind of plurality in the Muslim world. A lot of times when you talk about the divine, when you talk about God, a lot of Western people feel like it would be bad manners or dangerous or problematic or, to claim to have any kind of certainty about God. So you'll find people saying that they're spiritual or that they're atheists or agnostic. When I talk to them, what I find is that they do believe in something that's not material. So a lot of times people will say the universe, or they'll say, life has a way of doing so and so. They're talking about the unseen source, the unseen reality that governs the scene. And a lot of people will say the universe because to say God, they associate that with usually something in Western Christianity. So when you say, well, like, what do you mean by God? And what they describe is something that Muslims do not believe in. They're usually talking about some sort of Christian conception of God. Even if they don't believe in a Christian idea, most modern Western people believe, like, just kind of have this unexamined belief that any other religion in the world is probably just a little bit more exotic version of Christianity. So the idea that somebody has a completely different conception that's worth examining is one that a lot of modern Western people have not considered. Even if people are able to know that there's something wrong about racism, there also is a certain supremacy around modernity and modernism. So this belief that modern people are more civilized and more advanced and more developed and more intelligent and more virtuous and more merciful and more righteous and more just, and that modern people are the best people. That's a type of discrimination on its own, to believe that pre-modern people, that they don't really have anything to say to us, that they don't really have anything to teach us. And this is a difference in worldview, it's a difference in understanding. But then also, people that come out of the Christian kind of formation of society, the Christian West, have this feeling that if you have certainty around what God is and what's true and not true about God, or even have an idea of God as like a reality that can be known, and that there are certain things that can be understood about God, they believe that there's danger in that because of years of being traumatized by wars between Christian factions over the tiniest theological beliefs. So somebody will say this little phrase or this little turn of phrase, is true about God. This is how you describe God correctly. And anybody else is a heretic. And so we have to have wars, and entire wars have been fought. And so, but that's a very uniquely Christian idea and way of insisting upon the particulars of their theology and their assertions within what they believe. And so there's a feeling that, like, well, if I believe this about God, if I have a certainty about God and even affirm that God exists and not just the universe, or not just kind of, well, like, life does this. Okay, what people are referencing is a divine higher power, if people want to say that, the supreme being, the source, the most high, the creator. That's in that realm, to be talking about the universe, or to believe in karma, or to believe, that if you put good into the world, good comes back to you. Well, that's not a material thing that makes that happen. That's something outside of space and time. that would be overseeing something like that. But so many modern people don't want to talk about God because of centuries of being traumatized, millennia of being traumatized by these kind of like fights within theology and also practice. So like, what is orthodoxy and what is orthopraxy? Orthodoxy means the standard way of believing. Orthopraxy means the standard way of practicing. But within the Islamic tradition, there is understanding, it's in the Quran, that there are going to be other religions. That like the whole world is not going to be Muslim. That's just not something that we are thinking we're going to do. Like, that's not a project for us. There's always going to be Christians. There's always going to be Jewish people. Allah talks about, other religions by name, and also has critique for those religions. Like, these are the things that Allah is saying where those communities got off track, whether with practice or theology or the way that they, communities have done things. So there's critique of Christianity, to be certain. There's critique of the children of Israel, to be certain. But what Allah always says about them is, among them there are sincere believers, and they believe and they do good, and they'll have their reward with their Lord. So we even understand that there are people in those communities that have a very sincere and true relationship with God, and that we don't suspect that we have a monopoly on truth. We don't think that we're the only people that can access God, or that God loves, or that God cares for, or that go to hell. Like, we're not alone in heaven. We don't believe that. And then also within the Islamic tradition, it's been understood from the very beginning that there are certain foundational things that we all believe in. And if a person or group doesn't have those foundational things, then they're going to be considered to be a deviant group, like that. These are deviant opinions or beliefs. But even some of them are still recognized as Muslims. So the Sunnis and the Shiites, they still recognize that each other are Muslim. That's the first kind of like divide. And then within that, there were groups that different ways of understanding theology. So they'll all have the same foundational beliefs, but there are differences in how we understand those things, how we talk about them, whether or not we should talk about certain issues. The language is different. The approaches are different. There are multiple ways of referencing Islamic theology. And then within that, you have the creed. So there's the theological conversation, but then there's the creed. And the creed are the assertion of certain scholars that these are the things that we all have to believe in to be Muslim. If you don't have these things, then you're talking about a different religion. That's the creed. But there are many creeds, and they differ from one another. And so we have what we believe. Then we have the Sharia and fiqh. The Sharia is the code, the prophetic code of how to live, what's right and what's wrong, and varying degrees of good and bad, of all the things that a person can do or say or look at or eat, or all of the actions, the outward actions. And within Sunni Islam, there are 4 major schools or 4 major approaches, and they recognize each other's validity, even though they don't come to the same conclusions. They all come from the same sources, and they all have the fundamental, foundational things in common. So they all believe that there's 5 prayers a day. They all believe that we fast in the month of Ramadan. They all believe that, if you have more money than you need for a year, then you're obligated to share with other people. But some of the details within that, they'll have differences of opinion about. So that was those 4 major schools from the majority of the Islamic tradition. And then you had kind of an approach that came along, a reformist kind of approach that came along in Saudi Arabia a couple hundred years ago. And they have a slightly different approach. And in some ways, a very different approach. But then you have the belief and the practice. And then you also have spirituality, which is really, some people call it Sufism. Whatever we call it, we're talking about the spirituality of Islam. And there are people that talk about Sufism as though it's a certain understanding or approach to Islam, or as though it's even something separate from Islam. They make it seem like this kind of fringe thing. Traditionally, tasawwuf, or purification of the self, basically how to take the beliefs and the practices, but how to become those things on the inside, so that not only am I believing and having a sound relationship with what's true, and also I have a sound outward practice that's virtuous, but it's possible to have those things but still be judgmental and to still be insincere. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible to be able to state all of the things about theology and to have a really solid outward practice, but to be a hypocrite. And one of the really amazing things about Islam is that the Quran is the biggest critique. There's no critique that people make. There's no real critique that people make of religious people, except you'll find it made in the Quran. The Quran warns Muslims about all of the ways that a person can go, or a group could go off track in religion and be it's possible to know the scripture and quote the scripture, but not actually follow it, and to still be a person that's full of rancor and resentments and, judgment, and practice it performatively. All that stuff is really a major possibility. And it's possible for people in the name of religion to do horrible things. All these things are warned about in the Quran. But that's the human condition. That's not religion. Like, people who just say that all of that is religion, well, maybe you're just talking about the religion that from your society, from your civilization. Maybe you're talking about your civilization's relationship with religion. But also, you find in any human endeavor that happens. It happens in therapy, it happens in art, it happens in organizing, it happens in business, it happens in government, it happens. Human beings have the ability to destroy anything in the name of what's beautiful. We almost never announce that we're going to do something evil and ugly, because that won't work. We won't have access to other people by doing that. Almost every evil thing that people do is in the name of something good. So that's the human condition. That's not religion specifically. I feel the same way when people say, well, hip-hop is misogynistic and hip-hop is violent and hip-hop is... It's like, it's not solely hip-hop. Like, it's unfair to say that, Or there were people in the Twin Cities that were criticizing the hip-hop community or certain record labels, and like, these record labels are bad to women. And like, I don't see it that way. I don't think that's a fair allegation. You know what I mean? Like, I think our society is horrible to women. And so to say that it's the musicians, or especially to say that it's hip-hop, and especially to say that it's one or two record labels that just happen to be successful, and it just happens to be artists who don't have that degree of success that are insisting that the successful ones are the ones propagating that. And I just don't see those assessments as being fair. But in any case, also within the spirituality of Islam, there are different groups and different ways of approaching spirituality. They have a variety of different... but the fundamentals are all going to be the same, but they're going to focus on things in different ways. So the particular teachers that I have and the community that I have, that we approach that we travel and attempt and have aspirations to travel on the spiritual path, to know the Creator, to have a relationship with the divine that transforms us into what we believe we were intended to be, inside and out. So our particular teacher really insists that what's important for us to focus on is love and service. And so that's where the idea of the inspiration for this album comes from. And so as this album was just about to come out, we went to West Africa to be with our teachers and to be with the people in the Gambia, and also the students that come from around the world, people that come from around the world. It's just such a beautiful thing. I want to talk a little bit about the journey of the album, and then also I want to talk about what that time was like and how it ties into the message of love and service. So, Bismillah, this album started literally when my family and I were almost, in some ways, we're fleeing Minneapolis and America. And in some ways, it was a beautiful opportunity. I think that both things were really the case. So, I had really been struggling business-wise. I had really been struggling to try to figure out the way forward for my career with the people at Rhymeseers, the people that I was doing my business with. I was on that one label for 20 years. And it just became something that didn't work for me anymore. I've talked about it on the podcast, but the things it's very possible for a group of people, like I said, human beings can go off track, and even if nobody has any bad will or intention, and I know that that's the case at Rhymesayers, everybody there gets up and works very, very hard because they love and believe in each other and the art and what we're doing together. And so, but I was in a really kind of unique situation where I came on right in the in-between phase where there were artists that were there from the beginning, and they had some sort of agreement between them that it was a collective, and that the artists that were there at the beginning all had some sort of stake or ownership, or it was undefined. It was like an undefined stake or ownership in the label. And I would find that they would do shows and nobody took the money. They all would do shows together. They all supported each other. They would put out music together. And then they would just all put it back into the company. Nobody was profiting from the stuff that they did together. And it was called a collective, and they all showed up and did whatever was needed. And it all just, so Musab put out an album, and the money from that album went to make the Atmosphere album. And then the money from that went to make the Dino Spectrum album. And the money from that went to make, the Idea and Abilities album. And so I came along in the time where they had already been going. It was already happening. But it was before it became a national kind of established record label. There was no distribution. There was no, music industry involvement at that point. I came along right at the time they were opening a record store. And so that aesthetic and that kind of understanding is something that I took on. And so I kind of always thought that I was included in that, having a stake or some sort of ownership or shares or a vote or something in the label. And so you can call me stupid, but I'd never negotiated. We never had contracts between us. And I did all of my work on that label. And they were, now it's called a 360 deal, but they were the management, they were the record label, they were the accountants, they were the merchandise people, they were the tour managers, they were the social media, they were everything. Because the idea was, and like I said, everybody there is very sincere. The idea was we're just going to build this thing as we go, and whatever artists need, we're going to try to figure out how to do that. And, but the other side of that is that we never, when you don't put things in writing, Allah says in the Quran, anytime you have an agreement between people, put it in writing and have witnesses there, and don't change what you've written. And, because one, if we never state things clearly, it's possible that from the beginning we had different ideas. And then also things just change a lot and shift a lot when you're building a business brick by brick. And I'm building my career brick by brick. It's not like we have a master plan. So basically what happened over the years is it worked for me less and less and less. I was in a really situation where I almost quit because I just couldn't figure out how this was ever going to turn itself around. I was perpetually in debt to the label. I was having to tour and perform all the time. It didn't feel like anyone was kind of looking out for my interests specifically. It was always this kind of feeling of what's best for us all, which is cool. But then also I kind of thought that I had a stake in the overall picture of things. And I didn't really realize that that wasn't true until there were a number of things that I wanted to do differently, or I didn't agree with, or certain things that, certain moves that were made about things that I didn't agree with. And I realized I don't own any of this. I'm not seeing profit from anything else that happens with the label. I'm only seeing a profit from my own music and shows, and it's kind of whatever share they say I get. I never really got a chance to negotiate for what is that share and how do I get paid and who gets paid what and what money gets spent. And I never really had any control over any of that. And so, yeah, I had years of feeling really like I don't like how this is going and I don't know what to do about it. And I just felt really powerless. And so I ended up getting the main people together and saying, like, I love all you guys, but I need to figure out how to do this on my own because I can't continue like this. And I really can't have this feeling of powerlessness and hopelessness. I got to be hopeless. And it's like, I love all these people and I've tried everything I know how to do, but it basically came down to me like begging, like, can we please do something different? Because I'm in debt. I'm touring all the time. I'm in my 40s now. I'm losing my voice. What are we doing here? And so I ended up going on my own. But what that meant effectively is that, also me and my wife don't have parents. And we got these kids and we don't have savings and we don't, we didn't have a financial safety net except for that label. And so going independent meant not having that safety net anymore. And I did that in the middle of the pandemic when there's no shows. I can't go on tour. The only way that I was seeing any money was to go on tour and to perform. And I couldn't do any of that. I wasn't seeing royalties because according to the way that the accounting had gone and everything, I was in debt to the label, which is how most of the time things end up in the music industry is on paper, the way the accounting is, the artist ends up in debt. I don't blame that specifically on them. It just seems to be the case that, like, I know a lot of artists that are successful by anybody's standards. They made it. And those artists tend to be in debt. They tend to have to perform a lot and do a lot of side gigs and a lot of features or sell beats and do little side hustles to make ends meet. Not all artists succeed, but these are artists who are successful, who have a fan base, they've made music that really matters to people and people want to see them and want to hear them and care about what they're doing. That's a successful artist. The successful artists I know usually die in debt to their label, in their managers, and they work themselves to death. That's just the way that the music industry is. Whereas the successful business people I know are all chilling. They have second homes, their kids are doing well, they got properties, they got investments, they got all this stuff going on. They're doing great. Now, not every business person is successful, just like not every artist is successful. But most of the business people, and when I was looking at the people in the office at Rhymesayers, their lives were very stable, and whether or not my family did well didn't have much bearing on how well they did. Now, that's not them specifically. Again, that's the way the music business is set up. And I just couldn't figure out what to do about that other than try to make it on my own. And so that's what I did. So that had happened. Along with that, there was uprising in South Minneapolis. I'm married to a Black therapist who is like serving the community, and she also has a lot of PTSD in her life. It's part of what led her to being a therapist. But she's amazing. So I'm like, okay, I used to be a person that did a lot of activism and organizing. So there would have been a time when if something was happening, I'm outside and I'm out there supporting and organizing and getting resources and things. But this is not the time for that. My wife, who is a Black woman, who is a therapist, and her office is in the neighborhood where George Floyd was killed. So it became really clear to me, my role is not to be outside doing all this stuff, being a big, bad revolutionary activist, organizer, spokesperson. My role is to make my wife feel safe and to make her know that she's loved and to take care of the kids and to take care of the house so that she can survive this thing on her own and also be there for her clients. So that's what I'm doing in this uprising. That's my job. And I still spoke out, and I still, there was like a series of Instagram lives that I did at that time. I did what I legitimately could, but the main thing for me to do was to, like Chris Rock says, sometimes you're the lead singer, sometimes you're on tambourine. And like during that time, I was on tambourine, but it was also very challenging for all of us, And then, like I kind of alluded to earlier, there was a cancel culture thing that happened in the Twin Cities, and it really, in a lot of ways, felt like the only people that were being vocal were people who were tearing down each other in the music community, in the arts community. And so, and there were not people providing any sort of alternate narrative to that, and that hurt. Like that was a mourning, that was a grieving. So there's all these things happening. And we had for a while been thinking about coming to Istanbul. My wife studied in Turkey back in 2014, and she came back saying like, we should live there. And she was saying specifically to me, she was like, you would love Istanbul. I hadn't been here yet. I'm recording this from Istanbul. She's like, you would love it. It's you. Like if you were in a city, that would be it. Except for there's not a lot of Black people there. But other than that, it's you. It's the mixture of modernity and art and the sacred and Islam, but there's also, thriving Christian and Jewish communities there. There's all sorts of different political ideas. There's a man in a turban and his wife in a face veil sitting on a ferry riding across the water in this beautiful thing directly next to, a gay couple with tattoos. And it's like, this is you. Like there's graffiti on the walls, there's ancient mosques, there's, there's old school cars, and there's, old school bazaars, old school cars, old school bazaars. Like it's all there. She's like, that is like you in a city, you have to live there. And she's like, and I'm gonna live there with you, but like, that's you. And so I think we both thought that was gonna be in retirement. But we knew some people that lived here that were like, yo, it's much less expensive. You can't go outside anyway. Bring your family here and ride out the pandemic here, and you'll have community and we can be together, and you just get away from all that stuff that's happening. So it was traumatic, and we got out of our house very quickly. We rented it out with the help of some really very, very helpful people. And, most of the stuff that we owned got thrown in the trash or donated or given away. It's not like we had months to prepare for this. In the beginning of March, we had a tour coming up and we were just chugging away at life like normal. And so, suddenly everything got turned around. So we came to Istanbul and we rented an Airbnb for 2 weeks so that I could find an apartment and get everything together. And right when we moved in the apartment, we didn't have furniture. I think we had our beds, but we didn't have rugs. We didn't have chairs to sit in. We didn't have couches. We didn't really have dishes. We had just the beds. And I was sitting on the floor in my daughter's room, the two little ones, and I'm scrolling on Instagram, chilling with them. But like I always take the morning shift with them because they're morning kids and I'm a morning person. So, when I say morning, I mean like 5 a.m. might be late for us. Like we get up early. And I kick it with them for a few hours. The best time to be with little kids, in my opinion. Like you get the best version of them. And then, my wife and daughter get up later. The older one get up later. And then they take over and I take a nap. But I'm taking my nap is at like 9 a.m. because I've already been up for like hours. So, but I'm sitting there scrolling, and Paris, who's this like really dope and very militant, like pro-Black artist, one of my favorite artists from childhood that I've become acquainted with and really cool with, he posted this video that he made, and it was animated by a guy named Unjust. So I went and looked at his page, and it's like full of all these animated videos and super dope, like kind of lo-fi beats. So I'm like, man, what's up with this dude? Who is this dude? And I found out he lives in Oakland. And like I spent a lot of time in Oakland and in the Bay, and he was down with Hyro, like Hieroglyphics crew, Souls of Mischief and Dell and Casual and that whole crew. And I'm like, man, I know those guys. How come I don't know who this person is? And so I just reached out to him like, hey, man, you're dope. And he hit me back right away and said, I'm a big fan. Would you ever want to do something together? And I said, yeah, I do. But I just moved to Istanbul. Like I literally am sitting in this big empty apartment. I don't have any way to record. Give me some time to get set up. She said, okay, how long do you need? I said, give me a month. He hit me back a month later and sent me 30 beats. He said, I've made a beat a day since you and I talked. And these are all for you. Nobody else has heard them. And I'm punching through them, and like every single one was a little bit weird. They all had this lo-fi kind of feel to them. He said, it's because of the pandemic, I can't go to the record store and buy records. So I've been sampling these like informational children's films from the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. A lot of those have really dope music in them. And so he's like, that's what I've been sampling. And he was doing it on the ASR 10 keyboard, which I love. So it had this like weird, like all the beats were a little weird, but they also they all made me feel something, and they all were interesting, and they all tied together. Like you could tell that it was one person making these things from a very like sincere and kind of intimate place. I'm like, yeah, I love this. So I just went in and sat with the mic. I actually had just got a office in this like old kind of shabby building that I've really grown to love, because I never had an office. I never had my own studio in Minneapolis. I couldn't afford it. I worked in the basement of my crib, and that's fine. But I never had like my own space to be able to go to and just focus on my work. And so in Istanbul, I had that, and I paid these like carpenters to come in, and they built like a makeshift, like they came in with lumber and built in the corner, they built a makeshift booth. It doesn't even have a real door. Like they carved out a door, and they made it like their height. Like I'm 6 inches to a foot taller than most Turks. And so like I have to duck to go through the door, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like the door is for me. Why don't you make it tall enough for me to walk through? But then I just went on their version of Amazon, which is called Hepsi Burada. It means everything's in here. And I was able to order some like foam to soundproof it. And I put some rugs and stuff in there, and I set my mic up in there. And I just pulled up a beat that made me feel something. I made the song called Howlin' Wolf that's on the record. And I sent it to Justin. I was like, yo, man, I'm really feeling this. And so then I wrote the title track, Love and Service. And I'm like, okay, this song is about the biggest thing in my life and in my heart. Like I was able to, on his music, which I usually can only do with Ant, I was able to make a definitive song about something that was a mourning that I was going through. I did that song back in late 2020, early 2021. I kind of wish that we would have put that song out back then, because it was extremely relevant at that time. And it's kind of been sitting, but it's no less relevant now. It's no less true. That's a song about the phenomenon of using the internet to attack each other in the name of justice. So easy to be ugly in beauty's name. And how flawed that thinking is, but also understanding, like I deeply understand and care about the issues that people are talking about. So people were talking about women being mistreated, and I care very deeply about that. Like I've got music about it. My wife does that for her career. Like that's something I also care about. But the idea of a community pointing the finger at each other, blaming each other, untribing each other, it's like, this isn't the way. This is the reality that all of us have been grown and raised in this culture, this like self-predatory, self-cannibalizing culture, this very punitive kind of police state, prison, punitive colonial kind of culture. And culture isn't even the word, but like this way of living and this way of seeing and being in the world. And so the same things that we're fighting against in our social justice work, we all are raised in these situations, and it's part of us too. And so when one of us goes off track and then we all attack them, like we're all just playing out these cycles of abuse and response and trauma and pain and, cycles of abusing and enabling and covering or attacking and shunning. And like all of this, like this is sickness that we're just doing to each other. And it's like, I say, regardless of your politics, we're all victims of the system that we're trying to fix until they decide you're the embodiment of all of it. Now no more nuance exists. They post a statement about their disassociation so the mob won't come this way if we no longer embrace them. It's just like we're just trying to be safe from the mob. Like, no, just so you know, I'm not with him. Keep attacking him. Don't attack me. But now, who holds him and sees him? Is this really about growing and healing, or are we just getting even? The holy woke and the crazy religious, I roll with both and I still don't see no major difference. It's all just love and service. If not, what's the purpose? It come to surface that someone we love wasn't perfect. Pull them to the shore or push them in the undercurrent. Let them drown, head down, label them, number them amongst the worthless. I've never performed the song, I've never even rapped it. But I'm like, man. So I hit Jess, I'm like, dude, I just wrote one of the most important songs of my life to your music. And I think we need to do a whole album like this. Another thing that's interesting about this is that right before I left, like I had kind of come to some of these conclusions when I still was in Minneapolis, but it was before I left. I was at one of the lowest points of my life and career. And I got messages from a few people, from Yassine Bey, from Mo Amer. It was mostly those two, but then I texted Kweli because they were saying, Dave Chappelle is in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and he's got this whole thing going on. There's like this whole community thing he's doing. It's called Chappelle Summer Camp. They're doing a podcast called Midnight Miracle. He's got a bubble where there's like, health professionals out here. We're all getting COVID tested, and so we know that we're negative for COVID, so we can all kick it. There's no masks. There's like a little bubble, and all these artists are just chilling together in Yellow Springs, Ohio, like basically in the woods, in these like cornfields. And people are saying like, yo, Ali, your name keeps coming up in these conversations. Dave is somebody that I've known. We've never been extremely close, but there's certain people that when you're with them, it's like we really love each other very much, and there's all these connections that we have and stuff. And, it's just like we haven't had the chance to really spend as much time together, but we're deeply connected. And he's one of several people in my life that like I look at them in a certain way that like that person is part of me. Like there's a lot of people in the world that I like their music or their art, but Dave is one of those people, very much like Chuck D, very much like Cornel West, very much like several other people that I've felt that way. And then Allah brings me together with them and it's true. You know what I mean? Yassine Bey is that way. There are just certain, Amir Suleiman, there are people that are like, man, I'm supposed to know this person. And I feel that I know them already. And we come together and it is that. And I knew that me and Dave were in that place. And we've just got all these really amazing, for people who, some people would say they're coincidental. But then again, if you're a person that says you don't believe in coincidence, then what I would say is you believe in God. But in any case, so several people told me this, and Yassine told me, he said, man, your name keeps coming up on these podcast recordings. And so I asked Kweli, I said, should I come? And Kweli is like, yes, you should definitely come. So I went there and I spent about a week there. And I mean, all of my favorite people were going in and out of town. Like Chappelle he is extremely generous in his life, and so he had his private jet just going back and forth to New York and LA, and he's bringing in all kind of people, all sort of people went through there. And I've heard that there's a film about it, and I've heard that you can see me in the film. I don't think I talk in it or perform in it, and then there are episodes of that Midnight Miracle podcast where you hear my voice. I don't think that I'm in any actual like full segments, but there is a section where they play a quote from James Baldwin, and then in the background there's a quote from me saying that the black voice is the voice of God in American life. And that made me feel really good. And there's times where you just hear me like responding to things and stuff because I was just like there. But that, for me, was a major, major, major moment of like validation and confirmation. And it just gave me, it was very healing, and it really gave me this feeling that I can do this. Like I can go and do and build a new life. This isn't working for me. And no matter how much I love these people, and no matter how much I've been so connected with Minneapolis and with Rhymesayers and with the activism community and the Muslim community. Excuse me. My wife and I actually had a community, like a Muslim community project for 5 years. Like there's people that converted to Islam with us. We did their weddings. We buried people, like all this, I had been an imam at the major like African-American mosque in the Twin Cities. All kind of stuff I did in that community my whole life from the time I was 15 until, I was like 40 at this time. My whole adult life and career had been in this specific setting. Even though, we go around the world and do all this kind of stuff, but like that was the home base. And there was just something really perfect about the timing of that event, that these are the people that I look up to the most. You know what I mean? So Yassine Bey saying you're dope, and Pharoah Monch saying you're dope, and Dave Chappelle saying you're dope, and like, Black Thought, and like those people saying that to me mean more than anybody else, mean more than whoever, Jay-Z or Rihanna or whatever. Nothing against those people, but the people that mean the most to me, it's like I do this in my mind anyway, for the reason that they do it. And for that community of people to say like, no, man, you have something to say, you have something to offer, you're dope. Allahu Akbar. I don't know if you can hear the call for prayer, but I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, I just paused for the call for prayer. We don't like to talk through it. It's usually, even the call for prayer is a meditation. But in any case, so I had this really beautiful experience in Yellow Springs around Dave Chappelle. And once I realized that Unjust and I were going to make an album together, or at least do some sort of project together, that like, okay, we got 2 songs here, and one of them is extremely important to me. The other one I really love, like Howlin' Wolf was the first one we did. Love and Service was our second song. And I'm like, man, and he sent me so much music. I'm like, man, let's just make a little body of work together. So around that time, Just had been living in Oakland for like 15 years. He went from the Dayton, Ohio area, which is Yellow Springs and kind of the surrounding area, to Oakland to work with hieroglyphics. Check out those episodes that we did together. We did 2 episodes with Just. And he went out there to work with Hyro to help them with their like web design and things like that. And he really came into his own as a producer and did all sorts of work with them, which is really dope, And he said, I'm actually moving my family back to Ohio, back to Yellow Springs. So I had just left Yellow Springs, and he's going to Yellow Springs. And Oakland is actually a very central place to me in my whole trajectory as well. So the summer that my wife came to Istanbul, I actually spent the first half of that summer in Oakland. So the first half of the summer I went to Oakland and did a Arabic language intensive with this group of people that like they do like these intensive study things for like working adults who don't have the time to spend 5 to 10 years studying the Islamic tradition, but we still want to take our religion seriously. We want to know it. You can do these like very deep, really, and when they say intensive, they are intense. Like you are living and breathing the material. And so I went to their college in Oakland. Well, they were in Berkeley and I was staying in Oakland for the first half of the summer. And I mean, I just lived and breathed the Arabic language. And then the second half, I came back to Minneapolis to watch the kids, and my wife came to Istanbul to study the overall, like, kind of basics of the Islamic tradition. And then ever since then, I was really, really deeply connected to Oakland and the Bay Area. So I kept a place there. And then there was a family that, I mean, I went to Oakland at least once a month for the next 5 years straight. And the community project that my wife and I started was directly related to the work that was being done in Oakland. And I traveled around the country with this kind of like network of people doing this work. And all while I was still performing and touring and everything else. So it was a big part of life was Oakland. And so Just was leaving Oakland and going back to Yellow Springs where he grew up. And so I'm like, man, there's so much connection here. So doing those songs and then starting to work on other stuff started this relationship between me and Just where we started processing all the things that we were going through together while we worked on the music. And we grew to really love and value and appreciate each other very much, you know. So we make this album, and then also it's like, oh, that's right. Just is also a visual artist. He's a illustrator. He's an animator. I mean, he's done videos that I had seen before. So he did my favorite Rock Marciano video. And Rock Marciano is a legend, you know, for underground independent and just kind of, I would say, like traditional hip hop music. I mean, after Doom, he's the dude. After Doom and Sean Price, like, you know, that was kind of a certain era of Doom and Sean Price. And Rock was doing his thing then, but I would say with those two guys, like he is the Doom or the Sean Price of this era. He is the equivalent of what Jay-Z or what J Dilla is on beats. That's what he is. And he's a producer as well as an MC. And one of the things he says on our record, he says, yo, I want to put your nose in my biz and build whole careers off my stolen ideas. I remember one time Ant said that Prince was so dope that Prince would just do one little solo or one little riff or something in a song, and another artist would take that little snippet and make a whole genre out of that little snippet. That's how ill Prince was. Rock Marciano is like that. And I mean, you know, it's no exaggeration to say that a lot of what Alchemist and Griselda and, you know, others in that world, you know, Billy Woods and, you know, all of these super dope artists, a lot of their stuff is influenced by things, you know, Ka and Homeboy Sandman and Quelle Chris. And, you know, there's an approach to making hip hop music that in a lot of ways Rock Marciano really stood on and stood for and put a lot into, both in terms of his business practices, his production style, you know, the beats with no drums, like doing a loop or, you know, and then rhyming just to the loop of a record, and a certain approaches to the underground thing, the way that vinyl is done, these like exclusive vinyl drops and things like that. All of these people that I mentioned put bricks in that wall, but it's a wall that was constructed by Rock Marciano. And one of my favorite videos of his, Just had actually done that. So I'm like, man, while we're building this thing, I'm like, man, what would you think about animating and illustrating this whole album? So when we're done, it's also a film. And he's like, yo, that's what's up. So he did one. He started with the, he started in order. So he did a video. There's a video for Howlin' Wolf that we haven't dropped yet. And there's one for Love and Service. And they're both great. But the Love and Service one to me is It's amazing. And we haven't released it yet, at least at the time that I'm recording this. But it's incredible. And then I did Cadillac. Then I did the song Cadillac, which is a story I've been trying to tell my whole career. Like, the incident from Cadillac happened before I even really had music out. It's like while I think I was while I was working on Shadows on the Sun is when that actual incident happened. And I've wanted to tell that story for a long time and never really knew how to do it. And just gave me music, and I'm like, man, this is the space I'm in. So I wrote that song on the mic. I didn't actually sit down and write the words. I just thought of a few bars and kept adding on to it. That's the song about my father-in-law. We got pulled over. We got threatened by the police and guns to our head and all kind of stuff. And I recorded it. I kind of wrote/recorded it in 3 parts. And because I didn't know how to finish it, I'm like, how do you end this song? And while all that was happening, we got the word that he had died, that my father-in-law from my first marriage had died. Rest in peace, Harold Washington, Pops. He went by a bunch of different names, but he passed away during this time. So that was another one. And so then just did a video for Cadillac. And it's like, yo, and they all had different styles. And it's like, yo, that's what made us feel like, dude, okay, this thing that we're doing is different. And so we just kept adding on to it. The beat for the song called Manic, which is A$AP Rock and Casual, I got that beat, and you can hear me and Just talk about it, but I got that beat and I was like, okay, I've always wanted to hear the two of them on a song. And I'm like, okay, you reach out to Casual since you worked with Hyro for so long. I'll reach out to A$AP since I worked with Rhymesayers for so long. Let's get each of them. They both came through. Then I had to try to follow that. We did the song called Ghosts. The song called Ghosts about people ghosting each other. And I had a really painful experience with that. During this whole kind of like COVID time, I had a really painful experience with that, with someone that I was really close with that ghosted me. And it hurt very bad, like really bad, you know what I mean? It's one of the things that kind of like led me to therapy. And so, in that sense, it's great, but it was a very, very kind of painful thing. So I made that song, and I reached out. I was thinking like, okay, I want Quelle Chris and Homeboy Sandman on this one. So I told Homeboy Sandman about the idea, and he was like, yeah, I love that dude. He's so dope, man. And he's just been such a beautiful person whenever I've been around him. Angel, man, he's just so ill. He's been dope a long time. He came out on my tour for Morning in America back in 2012. And he was dope back then. Like, he was dope the second he started. Like, this guy is different. But I mean, over the years, he's just gotten iller and iller. And so I reached out to him about the idea, and he was like, yeah, I've actually ghosted people, so I can maybe talk from that perspective. And then Just knew Quelle Chris, and so he's like, same thing. You get Homeboy Sandman, I'll get Quelle Chris, and we'll have another one of those. But then I sent the song to Homeboy Sandman, and I said something about the app. I said, the app says you're online in the margin, so I know you're watching. And he heard that part, and he was like, well, I don't use these apps. If this is a song about ghosting each other using apps, like, I don't use any of the apps. And he doesn't. Like, he's not really on social media, I think, at all. Like, I don't, maybe not at all. But I remember when I went on tour with him, those were the Twitter years, and he wasn't on Twitter. So I was like, yo, this is crazy. This guy, like, legitimately is building a very serious underground independent hip-hop career with no social media. It's really wild. So he was just like, yeah, if it's about... And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be about apps. It could just be ghosting. He's like, nah, son, I don't do the apps. So he was just kind of... That's where he just couldn't hear it anymore. And I know enough to know you don't try to force artists, and you don't try to convince them. You show them what you're doing, and if they feel it, they jump in. If not, it's like, okay, we'll do another one. But Quelle Chris came through, and his contribution to that song is dope. So then we had that one, and then, we sent the joint to Rock Marciano, and then he came back with like a full Rock Marciano song. So then that came together. And then, other songs on the record. You can hear me and Just talk through the whole project, but just was a really very beautiful the way that it all came together. So in August, this past August, like last summer, I was in town working on some things and, had all this music coming up. And so me and BK1 went to some of the music towns to meet with some people about getting some music industry partnership. Because one of the things that we had thought is like, okay, we want people to know that this music exists. We want people to know this music is happening. And so let's talk to some people that we know in the music industry. So we took a number of meetings. A bunch of really cool things came up in those meetings. We met with someone about writing a book. We met with someone about a new podcast series. We met with someone, some very serious TV producers who said they wanted to do a TV series about my life. We met with some really big, legendary, well-known managers of artists who are also friends and really appreciate and understand what we do. And then we met with also some big artists, some, really big, well-known artists. We went to a video shoot. One of the things I'll say, just because this wasn't a commitment or anything, but I really love this brother, Chase Infinite. He runs Haroon Coffee, and he's an amazing MC on his own. I'm asking him to come on the podcast. But Haroon Coffee, Black Muslim-owned coffee shop in LA. My man, love this dude. Incredible artist on his own, also done a lot of really great business things, but he was A$AP Rocky's manager. He's had a hand in Griselda. So he was like, yo, we're doing a video shoot with Benny the Butcher and Lil Wayne. Like, come through. And so I went through and got to hang out with him and talk to Benny. Wayne wasn't there, but talked to Benny the Butcher, and then went and visited some other folks and just had this really great. We were in LA, but we were in other places too. I don't want to reveal who this other one is, but we met with a distribution company / record label about doing digital distribution for the music that we have coming this year, including this album. And these are people that we've done work with for a long time. They're major players in the music industry, and they're really good at digital distribution. They're really good at working the algorithms they can really target things. So even on streaming services, to get your music in front of the exact audience you want. And we sat together and had a great conversation. Just actually knew them. He had worked with them since the beginning of their stuff. It was great, people saying they got goosebumps from the music and all the ideas behind it. And we were talking about budgets, and we left, and it was a go. We had a verbal kind of agreement that this is what we're going to do. We were talking about budgets. We were talking about timelines and schedules, and we created this whole rollout of how the album would go and all these different things. And everything was great. And then October 7th happened. And the people at this company, they all made a series of posts of them. These are Jewish American folks, and they made a series of really passionate posts about all the things that were being said at that time about October 7th, things that have been disproven. There were these really horrific stories about things that had supposedly happened on October 7th, and there's been no proof that those things actually happened. They made posts about those things, and they made, and then what happened after that is the killing of tens of thousands of civilians. There was no posts about that. Also, I saw, and they were all, liking and commenting on each other's pro-Zionist, pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist posts. And I mean, these are executives of the label, that are, it's their face. They're not just reposting other people's things, they're making their own individual posts. Now, I'm not necessarily mad at that. Like, there's something about that, for people to ride for their own people, there's something about that it's like I'm not necessarily mad at that. But one of the things that I can't help noticing is now we're over 200 days into this genocide, this ethnic cleansing, these, like tens of thousands of innocent people, mass graves, bombing hospitals, bombing schools, bombing mosques, bombing the zoo, bombing museums, leveling this place, and not only have those people not said anything in protest of that, but also none of the artists that they work with have said a single word about any of this. I've been watching them carefully, looking for it, because these are artists oftentimes that have messages of general kind of positivity. It's not just about, like, their music is not about, messing with your girlfriend and buying the best watch and car. Like, these are artists that seem to have a message about what should and shouldn't happen in the world. And I just noticed that these artists have not, that are, on the label or distributed and, do the touring circuits and things like that with this group, none of them have said anything. And it's not like they've been careful or something, like they have said nothing. And I know some of them, and I know how they feel about this. So, like, and so this record company distributor ghosted us. They never said we're not going to distribute. So we got closer and closer to time to roll things out, and they just stopped returning our emails. And we sent them the music, and they didn't even listen to it. Like, we could see it was a streaming thing, and you could see, like, they didn't even open this, they didn't even listen to it. It's the same music that they were so excited about. So it's like, okay, we didn't even have time to go and find another partner, another distributor. So it's like, okay, I guess we're doing this completely by ourselves. So then we hired a publicist, and a publicist's job is to make sure that the press, the media, knows that this stuff is happening. They get it all together in the format that they need. They have contacts with writers and people that, are in the media. And it's very expensive. It's very expensive to do a media campaign. You're basically paying for several months of someone to be on retainer, and the understanding or the idea is that they're going to help get everything together and they're going to present it to the media, and then the media that's interested, they'll pick it up. They'll play it. You'll be interviewed on their radio shows, their podcasts, their internet stuff. You'll be interviewed by them. They might premiere your videos and your singles and things like that. This is like a top-notch industry situation. They weren't able to get us a single interview. Nothing. Like, we literally got nothing. Now, in the past, all of my releases, I've been able to count on the biggest publications. All of my things I've been covered in Rolling Stone since 2007. I've been reviewed by Pitchfork since 2003. Everything that I've done, I've been covered in Billboard. I've been covered in XXL. I've been covered in all of these. And so, it's one thing to say, like, okay, I'm in my 40s. I've been at this for 20 years. I might not, there's not buzz around me the way there was in 2007 when Uncle Sam Goddamn came out. You know what I mean? It's just not the same thing. It's fine. And also at that time, I played all the biggest festivals. Like, we played the main stage at Coachella. I did Rock the Bells many years in a row. I did Bonnaroo. I did, all of the big festivals at that time. And then since then, I've done a lot of the big reggae festivals. I've done a lot of the big, the festivals that happen in the summertime. I never played Rolling Loud. That was one thing that, like, I was no longer hot in that world when Rolling Loud. So I never played that one. That was like one festival that I've never played. But, we've always been able to play even like some of the bigger like venues and outdoor venues and things like that. I don't want to like mention too many more names because I just don't want to indict anybody in particular. But this time around, And I went out on tour with the Living Legends back in December, and I was saying on stage every night during Uncle Sam Goddamn Free Palestine from the river to the sea. This is consistent with the message I've always had. This is something that I've always been talking about. This is consistent with all of the issues that I talk about. This is who I've always been. It's not like this is a new thing, but we're in a new particular climate. And we got direct pushback on that tour with promoters like trying to stop me from saying those things. And these are all people that like and love me personally. Like they're very clearly at the show, they're backstage hugging me and bringing their friends back to meet me. And you can just tell when someone likes you. Like these are people that like me and they want my attention and they want to take pictures and they want to bring their friends, and their friends are like, man, I've been listening to you all, since college, and man, this song changed my life, and I played this for my son when he was born, and like, it's not personal. It's not that I'm no longer liked or something, but it's not that we went from doing the bigger festivals and the bigger media outlets to just really small ones, to where it's like, well, now you can get picked up by some underground independent hip hop podcast or website or something. Like we went from doing the biggest stuff in our industry, even though like I'm not a headliner on any of those things, but I was allowed to participate. To now, we have the first summer in my career where I don't have a single thing on the calendar. Like even during the pandemic, we performed in parking lots where people were in their cars. I've never, for a single release, not been able to get anything. Like nobody covered it. So it was played, the songs were played by Chuck D on his own personal radio station and mix show, which is like, I mean, that's amazing. And then Amy Goodman played our song, The Collapse, on Democracy Now! Now those are major badges of honor, but it's like those are people directly that I know. You know what I mean? Chuck D is a dear friend and a mentor and my hero, and he's always supported us. And it's like, yeah, they're going to play the Brother Ali records, the revolutionary records. That's what they do. You know what I mean? So those two did it. And that's not nothing. I appreciate them very much. But I'm saying not a mumbling word from anyone else in the industry in terms of the stuff. So what that leaves us is social media. Now I've got 500,000 accounts following me on social media. On Facebook, it's 300,000. And I reached out to a journalist friend of mine named Jeremy Scahill, who's a beautiful dude, major hip hop head. He's one of the people that founded The Intercept. He wrote a book and did a documentary called Dirty Wars. Really serious. I have this utmost respect for this guy. I just reached out to him and just tell him what was happening. He's like, oh yeah, you're being, and then he looked at my social media. He's like, yeah, you're shadow banned. That's what this is. So Facebook, 300,000 followers. I post music. So like, it's not even me making a political statement, but music, all types of posts. They get less than 1,000 views and 1 or 2 comments. Like this type of engagement, it shows that this stuff isn't being shown to people. 100,000 followers on Twitter, same kind of results. Maybe 1,000 people see it. Instagram is the one platform where I still do get some engagement. But so there's 122,000 followers there. And, in order for me to get my stuff seen on there, I normally have to pay to boost it. What I've noticed, so Instagram very clearly, it was an announcement that they made. People found it, and so they had to answer for it. But Instagram put a filter on everyone's account. Maybe it was only in the U.S., but saying, don't show me anything political. And it was a default setting. So you have to go in and change it. And if you don't know about this, then it's, you look look it up online. You can find instructions for how to change that filter so that you will see stuff that's deemed political. But so even on social media, there are posts that like I want to pay. You know, if you go and they're never going to show your stuff to all of your followers. Like these are all people that came here and clicked follow. I want to see what Brother Ali is doing. They're not going to show it to even a fraction of your followers unless you pay them. And they, you know, so you go through this process of like either run an advertisement or boost this post. And they'll say, well, they're just basically holding your stuff hostage. It's like, you know, give me $100. You got 120,000 followers. Give me $100 and I'll show it to 50,000 of them, which is less than half. It's like, okay, I got to pay you $100 per post for half my followers to see my post. And they're like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? Yes, it's the mafia. This is slavery. What are you talking about? Yes, you pay us. And then we show your stuff because we control this platform. Very similar to the streaming services. You know what I mean? It's like we put this album out, and on Spotify alone, I'm able to look there's a back-end dashboard on Spotify. On Spotify alone, it's been out since Friday. I'm recording this Sunday night. So 2 days it's been out. 3 days, 3 days. We're already over 250,000. Like we're approaching 300,000 streams for the album. And I'm like, oh yeah, how much do I make when we get 1 million streams? Because I'm like, okay, this is just one of the platforms. We're probably already close to 1 million streams. What does that get us? 1 million streams gets you $2,000. And that $2,000, we have to pay taxes on it. My accountant gets a percentage of it. You know, and then my partners, I actually split my profits with my partners. You know what I mean? So from 1,000 streams, I probably won't, or from, 1 million, 1 million streams, 1 million streams in less than a week. I'm getting 1 million streams on a new album that people didn't even really know was coming, that I didn't get to promote. But nobody wants to interview me about a Jewish, like in this time, where a Jewish producer and a Muslim artist made an album together and it's getting blocked and it's all this kind of, nobody thinks that's interesting. Nobody wants to interview us about that. There's not a single festival that thinks I'm still worthy of, I mean, it's just, when you're one of the very few artists talking about this particular issue, it's like, man, it's safer not to mess with you. You know, we can get 100 other artists. There's 100 other artists. Some of my great friends that are also super dope. You know, you can get all them. None of them are going to say anything. And I don't even blame them. It's just, this is my calling. This is what we do. This is what I do. This is what hip-hop is. This is part of what hip-hop has always meant to me. And so I have to do this. But I don't fault anybody that doesn't. You know, it's just, I have to. This is who I am. This is why hip hop and music in general appealed to me. It's always been connected to, even from the time I was a little kid, like, you know, the people that, my family is white, the people that raised me and cared for me and helped me understand myself and the world and life, we're all black. And in the 80s as a little kid, it's like, they're lying about black people on TV. They're lying about black people in the history. They're lying about black people in the movies. And this is all being done intentionally. It's very clear to me from the time I'm a little kid. So I'm like, man, hip hop is the place where black people get to show everybody how human they are, how brilliant they are, how complex they are, how, you know, how funny they are, how petty they are, how everything. The full range and full. This is the place where my friends get to show the world that they're full human beings, no matter what the dominant narrative is about them that's dehumanizing them. And I love it. And this is dope. You know? So to me, it's always been that. And so in any case, the music dropped. The album is out. You can stream it now. We did an initial pressing of CDs, tapes, and vinyl. The vinyl is deluxe vinyl, so, but we didn't charge super deluxe prices for it. Right now it's $55. But the only place you can get it, because it's not distributed, the only place you can get it is brotherali.com, which means that you put your order in, an email gets sent to BK1. BK1 is the one boxing up your order and like physically taking it to the post office. And so people in Europe are like, when can we get the European distributor? There's not one. It's just us. So like, yeah, I'm sorry, it costs $100 to ship you a record. That's outside of our control. Yeah, I can't do anything about that right now. And we're out of CDs. CDs sold out. The vinyl, we were hoping to sell out of it by the time that the music came out, but we didn't. We're about halfway there, honestly. But also, we never said these things are exclusive, and so, people have been asking, like, you're going to manufacture more CDs? In the past, when we've done vinyl drops, we'll do like, okay, there's 500 of these, and then they're gone. So we sell the 500, and people are like, press more, you can make more money. Like, no, we promised these people that they were buying something that there's only 500 of, and then it's done. So like they're getting a piece of the Brother Ali catalog that will not exist after this. If you weren't present in that moment, you missed it. You don't get, it's like this is just for people that were present in that moment. So we never advertised it that way. So we could always manufacture more CDs or something. But at this point, it's like we just want to sell through what we made, what we pressed up. But yeah, this project means a great deal to me. It really means a lot to me. I also want to share the experiences that I had in West Africa with our teachers, with the idea of love and service, and also really dealing with the idea of forgiving everybody with no exceptions completely. But I've already been talking a long time. And also I'm remembering that like I'm talking into my phone. I don't know how this is going to sound to you, but the album is out. And I'll say that the streaming numbers have been really good. Like I said, Spotify is the only one that I have the app on my phone to like check the back end. But we're well over 250,000 streams on that app alone. So my guess would be that within a week between all the apps, we'll probably have 1 million streams in a week, which says a lot. And it honestly, it's like all of the struggle of like trying to engage the music industry through this like introduction and rollout of the album was really whack. We spent a lot of time, energy, money, and we're just being gaslit. Like that's one of the things to me is like the gaslighting of it all is the like adding insult to injury. Like people pretending like, no, this has nothing to do with what you're saying. It's just, yeah, no, and like I get harassed by the security on the airlines all the time. Not the airlines, but like Department of Homeland Security, the TSA, the FBI came to my house. And there's times where like there's people waiting for me when I get off the airline, when I get off the plane. There's people that get on the plane and question me. There's people that will stop me and like search my wife and kids' bags in front of everybody. They insult us. They try all kind of stuff. And there'll be like an entire vacation or trip or whatever. And every single person that stops us wants to tell me it's random. And it's like, stop telling me this is random. You guys are bothering me. You're suspicious of me. And the one thing I always ask them is, do you or anyone else have any suspicion that I have harmed anyone, or I'm part of harming anyone, or I'm encouraging anyone to harm anyone? Because there's no way. Like, I've never said that people should be violent. I've never said any of that. I've never been a part of any of that. I've never been suspected of anything like that. And I'm not. None of my associations are like that. So this is about the fact that I'm a Muslim, which is legal. This is about the fact that I travel and study and perform and I make music and I write and I talk and I speak about ideas, which is all legal. And I always tell them that these are supposed to be my rights, but that also I'm actually doing a service. I see what people like me and Immortal Technique and Dead Prez and Public Enemy, and I see this as a service because of the fact that when you govern, there's going to be rage. There's going to be anger at whatever you're doing wrong, whoever is getting whoever is on the short end of the stick of whatever the government is doing. And especially a government like the one that I have to pay taxes to. That anger, that rage, that discontent has to come out somehow. And the artists give people a constructive way to communicate that rage and that anger. So this is a service that's being done. And no one's going to thank you for it. Nobody thanks you for telling the truth, by the way. Nobody who has the power to do stuff. People in power don't like truth. When they say speak truth to power, in general, people that are in power, they don't like truth and they don't thank you for speaking truth. The people that thank you are the powerless people, the voiceless, powerless people. And it's like, that's dope. You know what I mean? Like, that's who I want to be in alignment with. I believe in God. Like, I believe in God. So like, you know, at the end of the day, my sustenance comes from God. And Allah, like, so when Allah uses a means to deliver that, then that means is blessed because that's what Allah chose. You know, so Allah chose, you know, if you guys are buying my vinyl or if you've come to my shows in the past or, you know, someone books me for a festival and then they hand me a check, those are the means, like that sustenance is coming from the divine. In my mind, you don't have to agree with this. But I will say this is part of what makes me fearless. And also, you know, whether or not somebody kills me or imprisons me or tortures me or whatever, those are all decisions that Allah makes. And me trying to placate people doesn't change what my reality is going to be about whether or not I'm killed, imprisoned, tortured, blackballed, canceled, none of that. You know, people are the means that but if those things happen, those are tests for me from God. And they're opportunities for me to know God. I'm here to know God. I'm here to be connected to the divine. I'm not here for anything else. And I'm here to try to be completely good. That's when Muslims, we have two main faith statements that make someone a Muslim. La ilaha illallah. That means that there are no substitutes in terms of what I serve and where my loyalty is. There's no substitute for the unseen, eternal, divine source of us all. The eternal, absolute, divine reality. That's what I'm here to serve. That's what, you know, and there will be no substitute. So the sometimes kind of like simplistic translation is there's no God except for Allah. But what it means is there'll be no priority, there'll be no loyalty, there will be no seeking, no desire, I won't get or give anything to anyone but the Creator. But the Creator uses means to deliver things, and those means are blessed, and I honor those means. But the Creator doesn't need those means. Allah doesn't need festivals to take care of my family. Allah doesn't need, and so neither do I. And Allah doesn't need record sales or, you know, features in magazines or whatever. Allah doesn't need those things. Allah can give me what I need and what my family needs regardless. And if Allah chooses to withhold those things from me, then those are tests for me that hopefully I pass. And hopefully they actually disavow me of the illusion that anything in the material world has the ability to be trusted completely, absolutely. Everything in the material world, you lose it all. You lose it all. Like, you lose everything in the material world, in the world of time and space, you know. So if you're connected, so it's like none of these things are worthy of my ultimate loyalty. None of these things will be a priority. And it doesn't mean that I neglect them either. It's not spiritual bypassing. I have to honor all these things. And I love all these things. I do. Like, I love the people in my life. I'm going to lose all the people in my life. I love them all. I'm going to lose them all. They're going to lose me. I love my teachers. Either they're going to bury me or I'm going to bury them. And I'm going to have to figure out how to go on without them. And it doesn't make me love them less, and it doesn't make me less connected to them. It makes me not want to waste a single breath being anything other than present with them. And the same was true with my parents. Both of my parents died. The same is true with my children. The same is true with all my friends. Slug, Ant, Mally, Yasin, Pharaoh Monch, a bunch of people whose names you don't know. You know what I'm saying? We're losing it all. But what you never lose is the eternal, absolute world of meaning. You never lose that. We die. Like, I'm going to die. I don't know when. It could be tomorrow. It could be 100 years from now. I might live to be 140. I don't know. My teacher's father lived to be 150. You don't have to believe that. But not everything has been recorded by white people. So there's all kind of true things that white people haven't written down yet. And my teacher's father lived to be 150 years old or 140 or something like that. You don't have to believe that. I do believe it. I probably believe all kind of things you don't believe in. That's fine. The world's round. I know the world's round. So, but in any case, man, I'm joking, but I'm also not. So we say La ilaha illallah. That means there's nothing that substitutes, nothing stands in place of the world of meaning, of God, of the divine. And then we say Muhammad Rasulullah. We're saying Muhammad is a messenger of Allah, but we're also saying there is such a thing as the human nature is to be completely good. The human condition is that we're going to struggle with all these other very complicated elements of who we are. And everybody is struggling with those things. But we do believe that it's possible to be completely good. The prophets were completely good. Now, that doesn't mean that, God still corrects all the prophets. Like, Allah still corrects all of them. So the Prophet Muhammad was corrected, but it was not for anything that wasn't good. You know what I mean? It's just we understand that part of the human being, part of our relationship with the divine is that we make mistakes and ask forgiveness, because there's always like a rediscovery. There's always a reconnection that happens. It's not math, it's love. It's not mathematics, it's love. It's divine love. We love God and God loves us, and we love each other. And it's not mathematics, you know what I mean? Like, you basically take somebody to have true love. So like, there's people that I truly love my wife. So you take everything bad that's happened to me, all the betrayals, all of the disappointments, all the resentments, all of the, all the stuff that's happened between me and people in my life, all the bad things that have happened to me. You put that on one side of the scale. And then you put the fact that this woman who didn't know me from anybody, and then you look at it on paper and it's like, okay, she's gorgeous. I look like this. You know what I'm saying? When I met her, I am a dime to my name. I was opening for Atmosphere, and she didn't even know Atmosphere had fans. She's a black Puerto Rican cute girl from the Bronx, you know what I'm saying, working at Victoria's Secret. She didn't know about any of this. She's thinking like, oh, Atmosphere is this weird thing that I know about. None of her friends knew about Atmosphere. She goes to the show and like, whoa, why is it sold out? Why is SOB sold out 2 nights in a row? You know what I mean? Didn't even see me perform. I'm on this tour. I'm still, I had divorced my wife, my first wife, Islamically, but legally we're still married. Dude. And then she left New York to move to Minnesota just for love. And then here we are 20 years later, like we had, you know what I mean? And then on the other side, like when I met her, it's like, there were people that looked at it and they were like, on paper, it looks like she's marrying you for opportunity and you're marrying her because she's fine. So on paper, you could look at the worst of human intentions and say, you guys are just kind of the mutual opportunity thing and it might not be a good idea. But I don't know. I don't know. I could never figure out, like, did we really know, or did Allah just hook us up because our desires were sincere? But either way, it's 20 years later. And I mean, this woman, she did she did, I mean, she lived a very real life. Like, she was from the Bronx, and it's all real as hell. There's like all of the nightmares and all of the danger and all of the stuff that comes along with that life of a kid growing up, of like a girl growing up in the Bronx in the 80s and 90s. All that stuff was real. All that stuff was part of her life. 20 years clean and sober. Never went to a meeting. Never went to a program. First person in her family to go to college. Got a master's degree from the most prestigious in like private college in our area for what she does. The highest honors they could give. Broke every cycle and broke all of the negative cycles in her family. And the only one to do it, to break all of those. Just the stuff, you know what I mean? Not to disrespect anybody this isn't the thing, but I'm saying like all the things that they talk about people in that situation. You know what I mean? All her kids are with the same husband. Just all the stuff. And then on top of that, converted to another religion, picked up and moved her family to another continent. Like just all these amazing things in this woman's life. You know what I mean? So like the reality of love is like, it's not math. It's not math. So you put on the scale, you put every horrible nightmare that I've been through and that she's been through. And then on the other scale, you put the fact that we're strangers, that on paper it seemed really weird, and but we love each other. And it's like that love, it's like nothing. If I have this love, it's like nothing bad has ever happened in my life. Nothing bad has ever happened. None of it matters. I don't care. Like none of it matters for both of us. Like what, you know what I mean? And it didn't stop. Like we got canceled. We were broke. We had to move out of our house. It was, all this stuff. It's like, it's not over either, but it's like, man. And so I say all that to say that the human being makes mistakes as part of our relationship with the divine. So this idea of like that some religious language for certain people and their traditions have about like, these people are sinners and these people are saints, and like, the sinners that have to, again, no disrespect, but like, it's just not, we don't believe that an innocent person has to die for our sins, and that we have to, making mistakes and then getting back on good terms with God, and growing and learning through our mistakes. And I don't even just mean small mistakes. Sometimes, murderers and, everybody is redeemable. Everybody can come back. Everybody's redeemable with no exceptions. And the Prophet Muhammad, what we mean when we say Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, is that it is possible to be a completely good human being. And so that's what we want to do. We believe in God and we want to be good. And we don't claim that we are. I'm not, I'm not good yet. I'm not all the way good yet. But I won't set my sights and I won't make my goal anything lower than that. Because what would that say about the one that created me? I don't have the right to limit myself like that. I'm not the Prophet Muhammad by any stretch, but that's my goal. I won't set my goal lower than that. I owe it to myself and the Creator to like not set my goal any lower than that. So, so all of this is a beautiful thing. And the fact that the music is out. And the things that people have said to me just in the last few days on social media about the actual album, really very, very touching. Like somebody understands what we were trying to do here. And it just makes me feel kind of like, all this stuff of the industry, like we tried to get the industry involved in this record and they basically said no. And like, they basically are telling me like, none of us want anything to do with you right now. If you're going to insist on talking about Palestine and we have no control over how and when and what you're going to say. That's really what it comes down to. Like if we have you on our festival and you say something crazy, now we're in the news for that. And like, yeah, you never know what this Brother Ali dude is going to say. Like this guy is a religious fanatic or whatever, like he's done it over and over again. They let him on Conan O'Brien. He did Uncle Sam Goddamn. They let him on, I've been on stage at big festivals and, let all white reggae, hip hop, reggae festivals. And it's like, okay, we have to talk about the fact that this is a huge cultural appropriation thing that's going on here. And it's like, dude, you might not get invited back. Oh, well, you know what I mean? Like, I'm here to do what I'm here to do. And I thought, it'd be nice, but don't expect anybody to thank you for it, except for the people who are disenfranchised, powerless, voiceless. You know what I'm saying? The people who can't actually do anything in the material business world for you. But it's like, there's something about it that makes me feel a little silly for putting so much time, energy, and even concern into whether or not the industry was going to take part in getting the word out about this record. And the fact that, like, now it's out, now people can hear it. And even if it's like the numbers don't matter that much, like the fact that people are starting to, even so quickly when it just dropped, feel it and relate to it and live with it, like that's what this was about the whole time. But there's also something just kind of gangster about that. That, like, man, even with no industry help, and not even help, but like something opposite of help, they've been a hindrance. We still made the exact music that we wanted to make. We put it out, and whatever people Allah chose to receive that music are receiving it. And inshallah, we're not going to go broke right now. We're not going to starve right now. Like, we're okay. It's just the three of us. It's me and Jess and BK. And our families all have roofs over their heads now, and we've all got food now. And, my wife's at a hotel for her birthday, and it's fine. So just like, there's something really dope about that. It's like, that's not a lot of people get to even try to do this kind of thing. And here I am, a full overweight albino dude, looking like I look and talking like I talk and dressing like I do, all this stuff, 20 years in, 20-some years in, 24 years in. Rites of Passage, my demo tape came out in 2000. Came out coming up on 24 years ago. And, like, still doing it, like, still at it. So I owe you, if you're hearing this and if you've heard the album, and I'm sorry for talking so long, but thank you for rocking with all of this. Ideally, it would have been good to say this at the beginning of the podcast, but I want to give a big shout out to Merce, because Merce, his podcast is my favorite podcast. I love it. Go listen to his episode. He's talking through all of his albums, so it's just him. It's the best platform for Merce. And Merce is a dope rapper. He only got better over the years, but just hearing him talk about what all this means to him is so beautiful. I love it so much, and I love him so much. But check out, it's called The Best Rapper in LA. Like, yeah, go ahead, man. Talk your stuff, man. It's called The Best Rapper in LA podcast. He just did one for his song called Dark Skin White Girl. Amazing. Beautiful. I love it so much, man. It gave me new perspective on myself and my life and my wife and our relationship. And, like, man, he did one on the marathon. He just ran a marathon in LA to raise money for Nipsey Hussle's organization. I think it's called Neighborhood. So dope. So there's one about the song LA, and he talks about the marathon. And someone criticized him and told him it was like he was going on too many tangents, but I love it. I was listening to that when we were in West Africa. And he's got one about the song Dream Chasers. Dude, go and listen to that. It's as powerful as anything you'll hear about American life. It's really incredible. And Merce has supported me from day one. And everywhere Merce goes, he's been talking about me. And there's certain people like that. But, man, Merce is one of the biggest supporters, and literally will get on his podcast and be like, buy his fucking album. Buy the Brother Ali album. Go buy it. What are you doing? People are hating on him. Go buy that record. Man, so much love to Merce. Go and this is Merce's number one listened to podcast, and Best Rapper in LA. Merce's podcast is my number one podcast. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, but his is number one. And he's very consistent, and it's just really dope. So In any case, I love you all. I appreciate you all. If you go to brotherali.com, you can get the record. You can join the caravan. You can join the mailing list so that even if social media blocks us, at least you'll get whatever we do. I really hope you enjoy this album. I'm sorry if I have been obnoxious talking about it too much, but it's like it's all we got to get the word out about. You know, we're pouring our life into our work, and so we just want to make sure people have a chance to hear it if they want to. Thank you all very much. BK1 is the producer of this podcast, but sometimes I just do them by myself. Next week, we got a really dope episode, inshallah, but I won't spoil it by telling you about it now. We love you all. Thank you all very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.